Amateur Traveler is in its 20th year now, but can you imagine if I had people on the show who had never been to the destination, but had just read about it or seen a movie about it? That wouldn't make any sense at all, and you wouldn't listen. We all know how important it is to receive advice from people who know a destination to get the most authentic local experience. And a great option for experiencing this is Explore Worldwide and their authentic small group adventures, led by local tour leaders, perfect for solo travelers who want to meet like minded people with a desire for adventure. I'm often an independent traveler, but two of my last three trips were with small group tours because they organize everything and it's a lot easier. If you want to recreate the tour I did to Malta, they have a Malta and Gozo Discovery Tour. I'm intrigued by one of their tours called A Taste of Sicily. The company again is Explore Worldwide, and visit exploreworldwide.com to learn more. And thanks to Explore Worldwide for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler. The nights are long, the days are short, and the weather is chilly to downright cold, depending on where you are. It's a good time to slip into a Quince iconic Mongolian cashmere sweaters, which start at only $50. You can treat yourself to everyday luxury at an affordable price with Quince. If you really want to dive into luxury, you can check out their leather handbags, washable silk shirts, and European linen sheet sets. Whatever you're looking for at Quince, all the prices are 50 to 80% less than similar brands, and they do that by partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the middleman. They only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing processes. And of course, they use premium fabrics and finishes for that luxury feel in every piece. But you've already heard me rave about my Quince travel pants. Treat yourself this winter without the luxury price tag. Go to quince.com/traveler for 365-day returns plus free shipping on your order. That's QUINCE.com/traveler to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/traveler. And thanks to Quince for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler.
Got my bags packed, I'm on a roll. I'm heading out.
Amateur Traveler, episode 119. Today, the Amateur Traveler goes to Tahiti and French Polynesia. Learn about places to stay costing $10 or $1,000 a night.
You know I love it. I got to see one more cathedral.
Welcome to the Amateur Traveler. I'm your host, Chris Christensen.
Heading home, but maybe not today.
Before we get into this week's interview, I have a few news stories for you. The biggest news story is that I've started another travel blog, and that is called Tripinator, or Travel 2.0, tripinator.com, and I'm planning on putting more news stories up on a more daily basis on that particular blog. I separated it from Amateur Traveler because I didn't want people to get lost among the news stories and not be able to find the podcast episodes. So I'll be doing both and pointing back and forth between the two sites. So if you're interested in travel news, that might be a blog that you want to subscribe to. And the first two news stories that I have for you today come from things I wrote about on that. First is my outrageous travel predictions for 2008. In a year where the stories about travel were so outrageous, it was difficult to try and figure out how much more outrageous they would be next year. So I went all out and am making ridiculously outrageous travel predictions. And so check out a link in the Amateur Traveler show notes to that article on tripinator.com and see if you agree with me where travel is going in 2008. And the second news story I have for you is a question of how big is your entourage. Interesting article I found that talked about the President of the United States when he travels with an entourage of 250 Secret Service agents, 150 National Security Advisors, 200 representatives from the executive branch, 50 aides, 15 dogs sniffing teams, and 5 cooks in 3 very large jets. So check out that article for some of the details in that story. And the final news story is something I announced last week, but I'm going to put at the beginning of this show this week. There's going to be a live episode of The Amateur Traveler on New Year's Day. On January 1st, 2008 at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, and 10 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. We'll be doing a live call-in show. Live, there is no live audience here, but there will be people online that will be participating via the phone. So check that out. Hope you'll join me. There's a link in the show notes to where you can go. It will be held on TalkShoe.com, and you may want to go there ahead of time to download the TalkShoe software so that you can participate. Links to all of these stories and the show notes at amateurtraveler.com. I'd like to welcome to the show David Stanley. David is the author of The Moon Guide to Tahiti and French Polynesia and has come to talk about island paradises with us. David, thanks for coming on the show.
Well, happy to be here, Chris.
I always love it when we bring a guest on that talks about someplace I haven't been and really would love to get. So This is an exciting one for me because obviously when we think of Tahiti, we think of paradise.
Yes, that's right. That's sort of the cliche, and that concept is well marketed by the travel industry to make money on it. But it does have its romance, like when you get to the outer islands like Bora Bora or Moorea or further out to the Marquesas Islands, you really feel that you've reached one of the ends of the earth and you are in a sort of like a mini paradise. These islands are quite far away from the main travel centers of the world. Like it's not overrun like the Mediterranean islands or the Caribbean islands. You can easily just walk down the beach for a few hundred meters and you're well away from the tourist masses. So it really is a little bit of paradise, especially with the sun going down.
Now, I wonder if all we know about French Polynesia is we've watched South Pacific. What kind of surprises are we going to get when we get there?
Surprises. Okay. It's sort of like the exotic atmosphere, like the language is different because French is the main language used in the islands. Most of the people are ethnic Polynesians, like about 75%, and they do speak Tahitian in their home. But the language on the street is French. So if you do know a bit of French, it's going to help you out. Although the main people working in the hotels and restaurants, they know enough English that you don't really need French. But if you want to enhance your experience, it's good to have a little bit of French. And, of course, being a French territory, the food is better than, I'd say it's better than some other South Pacific destinations, although the Pacific franc is the currency in this area, and it is linked to the euro, which means that it's not cheap. You have to budget your money and time in these islands if you want to escape the really high prices. Now, there are ways to do this. If you want to go upscale, and then it's sort of hard to avoid spending money,
sure,
you're better off booking a package tour. And I don't usually recommend package tours, but if you book a package, your costs are known in advance, and you don't have this problem of being asked $250, $300 a night for a hotel room without any meals, which is what you can very, very easily pay on Bora Bora. In fact, $1,000 a night is the usual charge there. But if you have booked a package...
Sorry, I was just a little stunned there for a moment. $1,000 a night is the usual charge there. So at the high-end resorts.
Those are the big resorts like the Meridian and the Intercontinental and the Sheraton. If you search for Bora Bora on the Internet, these big companies have got their thing down, and they'll be the first ones you find in the search results, right?
And these are the ones I've seen with like the huts out in the water itself where below your bed is actually the surf and such. Okay.
In fact, the overwater bungalow was invented in French Polynesia in the 1960s at a small resort called the Bali High on Moorea, which no longer exists. Oh, there is a club Bali High, but it isn't the same place. It's actually owned by the same guy, but it's not the same place. But the overwater bungalow is the honeymoon experience of French Polynesia. Now, that's definitely not the only way to see French Polynesia. But if you're going to go on your honeymoon to French Polynesia, I highly suggest that you book in advance and book a package with all your costs prepaid. Otherwise, you're going to have a terrible time, unless you're pretty wealthy.
Now,
Yeah.
if we don't do the high-end experience like that, which, granted, looks wonderful, but for those of us who want to use our money a little more wisely, how then do you recommend approaching...
Okay, I can tell you just the way, because there is an easy way for the backpacker and the low-budget traveler to visit these islands too and get almost exactly the same experience without the glass coffee table so you can look straight down at the fish swimming under your bungalow or, the gourmet lobster dinner. You can have a similar experience by camping on the beach. And there are 2 large campgrounds on Moorea. Moorea is the neighbor island to Tahiti. You can get over there on a $10 high-speed ferry, which runs about every hour.
Okay.
And on Moorea, there's 2 big campgrounds. Now, you can get tent space there for about $12 or $15 U.S. a night.
Oh, interesting.
That's for the tent, not per person.
Mm-hmm.
And both of these campgrounds have communal kitchens, like you find in most youth hostels around the world.
Right.
And you can cook your own meals there, or you can get takeouts. There is an excellent one of these, what they call a roulette. It's like a mobile restaurant on wheels. It's like a little caravan that's selling food. And there's a really good one selling the best roast chicken I've ever had between the 2 campgrounds, which are about a 5 or 10 minute walk apart.
Huh.
And this is the way to do it if you really want to go low budget. If you go to these places, it's a lot of French expats who stay there. Americans and English speakers are definitely in the minority throughout French Polynesia. That makes it interesting too, but you have to be careful because on the weekend, a lot of French expats live in the main city, Papeete, and they work there, and they go over to Moorea for the weekend, you see. So a lot of the budget rooms are fully booked on the weekend. So I suggest people go over there on Monday, and once you're in the place, they're not going to kick you out. But if you arrive on Friday night, you might not get a room. There always will be camping space if you brought your own tent.
Right.
But the room in the dormitory at these campgrounds, they both have dormitories. All the beds will probably be full.
Okay.
And there are... even on Bora Bora, there is one campground. It's a little bit more pricey. You're going to pay upwards of $20 to camp there. But there is a campground. Now, if you want to go somewhere between the extravagant overwater bungalow resort and the campground, there are numerous small pensions throughout the French Polynesian islands.
And when we say pension, we're talking about staying in somebody's home.
Exactly. But a lot of them have individual bungalows on the beach, just a short walk from the main house where the owners live.
Okay.
They'll have 3 or 4 bungalows lined up along the beach. And these places are usually, you can get room and board for under $100 in there.
Okay.
And that's the middle way to go. And you'll find those on almost all the islands of French Polynesia. And the tourist office in the main capital, Papeete, will provide you with free lists of the pensions with their prices and all the information about them. Now, the only caveat there is that the owners may not speak much English because these places are run by usually local Tahitian families. And their English will be limited, but you'll get by, but you're not going to have long conversations with them.
Okay.
Unless, of course, you're a French buff and have done this before.
All right. As someone is coming to French Polynesia for the first time, I'm assuming that if it's even possible, you don't recommend trying to see every island. So if you had, say, a week, where would you recommend people spend their time?
Okay, I've been to French Polynesia dozens of times, and I haven't seen every island. So
That's what I thought.
Forget about doing that, because how many islands are there? There's hundreds. And so, okay, suppose you got a week, huh? I suggest you're definitely going to go to Moorea. Okay. You can see it from Tahiti. Definitely you want to allow 3 days there. What I suggest to you to do, if you really want to do a whirlwind tour, as soon as you get off the plane in Papeete, get a connecting flight up to Bora Bora right away. Okay. Because that'll get you over the hardest travel part of a short trip that you're going to encounter. The flight will cost about it's a bit over $100 one way up to Bora Bora, but that'll get you started. And actually, when you land on Bora Bora, you land on a little what they call a motu, which is a low coral island off the main island, and a free ferry into the main island is included in your plane ticket.
Okay.
So you get a little bit of an experience there. And then stay a couple of days on Bora Bora. It's not a big island. You can ride a bicycle right around Bora Bora in 3 hours. It would be a little far to walk, but you can do the bike thing, and there are bicycle rentals there. And there are little pensions on the beach at the south end of Bora Bora, and they all organize lagoon trips in outrigger canoes, so you can go out snorkeling with the stingrays and sharks, etc. That is the big experience of Bora Bora. It's going to cost you a bit of money, but it's not going to cost you anything like the people over in the five-star resorts are paying. Then, after you've done that, you can either fly back to an island called Wahine, which is between Bora Bora and Tahiti. Wahine is like a little paradise that isn't as spoiled as Bora Bora, because Bora Bora's got about 24 five-star resorts.
Sure.
It sort of does change the atmosphere. It's still a beautiful island and still has a great experience, but it isn't exactly the remote Pacific paradise that you may have dreamed about in the past. Now, there are local ferry boats traveling from Bora Bora back to Tahiti about twice a week. And I always use these boats. On my last trip, I used the boat. But they are kind of primitive. You have to sleep on deck. You should take a mat and you lay it out in your sleeping bag, or if you don't have a sleeping bag, just some newspapers or something. You lay it out on the deck, in a covered deck, and you sleep in there.
And when you say sleep, I'm assuming then that the trip is a longer trip, obviously.
Yeah, up to Bora Bora, it'll take you almost 24 hours. Okay, from Tahiti to Bora Bora. But that's why I'm saying to take the plane out, even if you're on a budget, take the plane out and come back on the boat, because the timing of the boat to come back is much, much more convenient than the timing going up. You'll leave Bora Bora to come back around noon. You'll sail between all the islands around Bora Bora, which are called the Leeward Islands. You've got Bora Bora, Taha, Raiatea, and Waine. You sail between all these islands during the day, so you get some good views. And actually, the ferry stops on all the islands, and then you can get off and get on another one a couple of days later if you want. And then it's an overnight trip from Wahine down to Papeete, the capital, on Tahiti. Now, here's the catch. You arrive at Tahiti about 1:30 in the morning, which is, and you arrive in an industrial area north of the downtown at 1:30 in the morning. Now, and they won't let you stay on the boat till morning either. You've got to get off with everybody else.
Interesting.
So what I did, actually, I did this myself on my last trip, and I've done it many times. I usually just walk into town. It's about a 20, 25-minute walk from the ferry terminal into the center of Papeete. And if you walk fast, you'll reach the main square before about 2 o'clock or 2:30, and there's still some restaurants open there. Actually, there are more of these mobile restaurants on wheels, and they set up in the park, and you can get a great steak frite or anything you want there. Or you can just sit on a park bench until the sun comes up. Or actually, you don't have to wait that long. At 4 o'clock in the morning, the main market of Papeete opens for the morning crowd, and you can go into the market, which is already buzzing by 5 a.m., and get a great coffee. And the typical Polynesian breakfast is one of those long French fresh baguette breads, buttered, and a big cafe au lait, and you just dip the baguette in the cafe au lait, and there's a perfect breakfast for you. And you can get that in the market almost any morning for under $3, the whole thing. And so that's what I do. I go in there, and then I hang around a bit longer, and then you can start looking for a hotel around 8 o'clock. But you can't go and bang on the door of the hotels at 2 o'clock in the morning unless you're willing to pay for that night.
Right.
And, hotels in French Polynesia are not cheap. Like, I usually stay in a hotel in Papeete called the Mahina Tea, and there's actually a photo of the Mahina Tea in my guidebook, Moon Tahiti. And I stay there. Now, you're looking at $50 a night for a single room there, which maybe sounds cheap to some people, but, like in Fiji, you could get the same room for a third the price.
Okay.
And in Samoa, you could get the same room
Sure.
for a third the price. So French Polynesia is not cheap. It's not a place to go cheaply. But like I just explained, there are ways to do it on a budget. And I go into great detail about all this stuff in my book and tell you exactly how to do it and how to avoid paying, the 5-star price, unless you want to. I
Right.
got that in there too.
Now, I'm assuming that if I'm going to go to Tahiti, I should be somebody who likes to get in the water.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Well,
If I don't,
okay,
are there
okay.
other things to do in Tahiti besides the swimming
Yeah.
and the snorkeling and the...
Yeah. The snorkeling's great. There are opportunities, as I mentioned before, to swim with manta rays
Mhm, you mentioned the rays.
and swim with reef sharks, which are pretty harmless.
Mhm.
You don't even need to join a group to do that. There are places where you can do it on your own. The snorkeling is superb. A lot of the big resorts, they don't allow any fishing around their beach, and they do feed the fish. So there's all kinds of colorful little fish in the water around this resort. Now, the thing to do there is do not walk straight in through the lobby with your fins and everything through the middle of the resort down to the beach, because they don't appreciate that. What you do is you go to the end of their property, you go into the water there on the beach, and then you just swim along the beach to the front of the resort, and nobody's going to pay any attention to you.
Now, is
So
this something like in Hawaii where the beaches are public beaches and you are allowed, or are they private?
Okay, the beaches are all public,
Okay.
but
But the access is private.
You don't want to rock the boat because
Sure.
there are people there that are paying $1,000 a night, and
Right.
the resort people, there's no use antagonizing them. You don't gain anything from it, and you might as well do it the easy way. Just snorkel along the beach, and when you want to sit on the beach, just go a little ways down and sit there by yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some of the resorts won't even allow people to walk in and use the restaurant and bar, especially like the Club Med. There's a huge Club
Sure.
Med on Bora Bora. That is all-inclusive. So I've received letters from readers who really appreciate it. I don't go for Club Med. That's not my style. But if you want to control your prices, Club Med is a way to do it. And there's lots of activities there. They're on a good beach and blah, blah, all the usual things.
All right.
Yeah. Chris, there's one great experience which I'm going to tell you about now that you can do in French Polynesia, and almost anybody can do it. And that is to take a 16-night cruise up to the Marquesas Islands from Tahiti. And this is on a passenger-carrying freighter called the Aranui, Aranui. And you can find them online. Just go to aranui.com. Now, this ship sails from Tahiti up to the Marquesas Islands about 16 times a year on a 16-day cruise. And they take about 130 passengers. Now, the interesting thing is here, of course, you can get a deluxe cabin. You can get a standard cabin at about $3,500 per person,
Okay.
just for the cruise alone, or you can stay in a dormitory. Now, if you're alone, and you don't want to pay the single supplement, stay in the dormitory. That's what I always do. And the dormitory on the Aranui is air-conditioned. You have your own little locker where you can leave your stuff. And otherwise, you get the same facilities that the people stay in and the deluxe cabins get. And all the sightseeing on the islands is included. Like this ship stops at all 6 islands of the Marquesas, and they get off at each island, and organized 2 island tours are included in the price of your trip. And some of them are full-day hikes, like there was one on Fatuiva where we climbed up over a 500-meter ridge, and that was quite a strenuous hike, and believe it or not, almost everybody, all the passengers did it, and some of them were getting on in years. And they all made it across there, and sometimes they have banquets on shore when you have this island buffet with all the local specialties, and you have the Polynesian dancers come out and shake their hips in the tamuri dancing style. And it's a full Polynesian experience on this ship, and I highly recommend it to you if you're willing to spend a bit of money. Now, in the dormitory, you're going to pay about $2,200, all inclusive. That includes, of course, all these excursions, all your meals, and wine with dinner.
Okay.
and all the taxes and everything. So it's a little bit expensive for the backpacker, but it's still a great experience. And you're getting to islands which there is no other way to get to. Some of them don't even have airports, so there literally is no other way to get there unless you own a
Interesting.
yacht and are willing to sail around. And so if I had to pick the one great travel experience, I do that.
Interesting. Now, as you know, I think I told you in our emails that I usually ask people, what did the guidebook you're using recommend that you thought was a waste of time? I'm assuming there's nothing like that in your guidebook, but what did you find as you were researching this that was a bit of a surprise? Say the first time that you started the guidebook for Tahiti.
Okay, I'll tell you what one big surprise is, Chris, is when you have heavy rains during the dry season and long periods of sunny days in the official wet season. And that just shows, that you can't really go by what is always written in the guidebooks. Now, the dry season in the South Pacific on most of the islands is from May to October. That's the prime time to go, May to October. But you can experience heavy rain. Like last time I was there, I went in about late June, and that should be the dry season. And I went to, especially the Papeete, for the big festival, the Heva Tahiti, when they have dancing competitions, and you'll have big dance groups coming in from all the outer islands, and they perform every night in the stadium on the waterfront in the capital city. The dancing was canceled almost every night I was there because of rain. And I had good tickets for all the events. I went back to the ticket office. I said, hey, I missed this out. And so they'd say, oh, sorry, Mr. Stanley, we'll change your ticket for the next night. So I go again the next night, and again it's raining. This went on. Finally, the last night I was there, we had the skies cleared, and they put on the full show. But you've got to be prepared for changes in the weather. Well, other surprises there, maybe one of the big surprises is go inland. All the brochures will tell you to stay on the beach. Why not go inland? Because you won't find any tourists inland at all. And there's some beautiful hikes. You can actually hike up to the second highest peak in the center of Tahiti, which is 2,000 meters high. I did it up and down in one day, but I'm a bit crazy, and most people, there are a few huts up on the summit, which, you can spend the night in, and then you're there for the sunrise, which is spectacular. There's that. And also you can hike straight across the island of Moorea. From near the ferry terminal, you can hike up onto the ridge and then down the other side to Cook's Bay, which is a spectacular hike. That only takes about 3 or 4 hours. And all the islands have hikes. That's one of the surprises that most people don't know about is just head inland. Or actually, you can go up any of the valleys because most of the gardens are up the valleys, and you can see the places where they're growing taro and in the swamps. They've dug out the thing and they've flooded the areas. This is all up the valleys, and you can go up almost all the valleys on Tahiti or Moorea. Even on Wahine, there aren't many on Bora Bora. It's too small, but that's the thing to do, and that's not going to be your whole trip by any means, but it's something to do. And if you don't want to walk, on most of the main islands like Tahiti, Bora Bora, Wahine, and Moorea, they have safari tours, which is a four-wheel drive vehicle which carries between 6 and 8 people in the back, and they'll drive right up on these incredible dirt roads right up to the viewpoints on the top of the mountain on all these islands. On Tahiti, you can get one of these safari tours that crosses right across the center of the island from the north to south coast. Now, you cannot do that in a rental car. I guarantee it. I've tried. From both ends, I've tried. I was just happy to get back on the main highway in one piece, I'll tell you, and I didn't make it anywhere near the place where you really start going up. The safari tours go across every day, and it's quite an experience. You're looking at about $75, $80 for that, including a fairly good lunch. So it's not too expensive. French Polynesia isn't cheap, but it has these things if you want to have them.
Okay. As we start to wrap this up, can you think of one day or one moment where you were in French Polynesia and you were just thinking, thank God I'm here rather than anywhere else in the world?
Well, That's hard to say. Maybe when I was down at one of those campgrounds on Moorea that I mentioned and having a good roast chicken and the sun setting on the horizon, because both of these campgrounds face the setting sun.
Okay.
The good company you have around you, the young people from all over the world that you meet in these places, then you really do feel you've reached a little corner of paradise.
Anything else we should make sure that people know before we wrap up this show on? I mean, obviously, there's a lot more to learn, and southpacific.org is your website. We would certainly direct people to there as well as the Moon Handbook, but anything else they should know about?
No, it's just be prepared that this is not, unless you're on an all-inclusive tour, you're going to have to fend for yourself because English is not the first language of these people, and the prices are fairly high. So if you make a mistake, it could be costly, and you just have to be prepared to rough it a little bit. Unless you're willing to pump your budget up a little bit in the middle range, then you can get by. But if you're going to do this on the cheap, it's a little bit more of a struggle than it would be in a place like Fiji or Samoa, where almost everything is inexpensive.
The one other thing actually I thought of that I had noticed on your website was a luggage allowance on inter-island flights.
Yes, that's true. It starts about 10 kilos, which is about 22 pounds. And if you have more than that, they will charge you extra. They're not all strict, but you might hit somebody who was strict. So if you're flying on these things, you should keep your weight down. Now, there is a way to get around that. If you book and pay for your inter-island flights before you arrive in French Polynesia through a travel agent outside of French Polynesia, your baggage limit is 20 kilograms, which is about 44 pounds, and that's pretty standard. But if you just show up at the airport and book your ticket right there, it's 20 kilograms. That's why I sort of recommend people to do most of their flying at the beginning of their trip, because then you should have less stuff. And if you make purchases along the way, like wood carvings, etc., you won't have those when you're starting, of course. Another thing is you can go by boat to almost all these islands. There are regular passenger boat services to almost every island in French Polynesia. The thing is you need time to do that.
Right.
The only one which you can do on a whim is from Tahiti to Moorea, which goes every hour. But otherwise, the boat service is there, but it takes a little bit of effort to connect with it. And, of course, if you're on the boat, you can bring aboard as much stuff as you can carry.
Right.
I think that's the rule there. You have to be able to carry it yourself, and then you can bring it on.
That's the rule of my family in all cases. So,
yeah. Good.
Well,
Good.
You'll notice to the listeners how knowledgeable I sounded because I have been to southpacific.org, so we certainly recommend you check out David's website as well as the Moon Handbook to Tahiti. David Stanley has been our guest. David, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Well, thank you, Chris, and I hope to talk to you again sometime.
Bye-bye. I have one travel resource for you today, and that one is a bit of a news story as well. There's apparently a rule change being made January 1st for flying with laptop or lithium batteries. And you'll need to check this out. The bottom line seems to be that you shouldn't pack them in your checked baggage, but there is more complications. I'll put a link in the show notes to an article that comes from safetravel.gov. And that's a place to check out all the details of this particular rule change. But if you're flying in the U.S. and you do take your electronics with you, this is something you need to look into. In news from the community, the great debate over the change in the intro to the Amateur Traveler rages on. Kenneth loves the new intro, for instance. Yolanda hates it. And I'm planning on making a deciding vote at the live call-in show. So if you want to take part in that vote that will affect how we do the intro for the show for a while, let me know at that show. If you can't make it, drop me an email and I'll just basically do what the community tells me to do. For those of you who do love the intro and who love the theme song by Jeff Smith for the Amateur Traveler, and you're wondering how you can walk around with this as your ringtone on your cell phone, I don't know, maybe there is somebody out there who's wondering that. It is on my cell phone now. If you check out theamateurtraveler.com, I put up a story there that shows you how you can get that as a free ringtone for your phone, the first 40 seconds of the song. So those of you who have been missing it since I've been talking over it in the intro, there you go. It's my peace offering for you. Welcome again to all of you who have discovered The Amateur Traveler through iTunes and through the recent promotion from iTunes, and thanks again to the people at Apple for promoting the show now for about 6 different weeks during the course of the show's history. In feedback from you, the community, I got an email from Jackie who wrote and said, I found and subscribed to your iTunes Advanced podcast about 2 months ago, and since then I've downloaded almost all your episodes to listen to. It is so much fun to hear about new places, even more fun to get another person's perspective on the places I have been. Listening to podcasts on the places I have been takes me back to being there myself, so I can relive everything again, and sometimes even reminds me of the little things I had forgotten about. It's an interesting point you make, Jackie. I hadn't even thought about the fact how much I enjoy stories even if I've already been to the place, and it's something I don't think anybody's commented on before. And then Jackie goes on to say, I want to thank you for making such a great podcast. I recommended your podcast to all my friends who have traveled and even those who have not, hoping to get them wanting to travel. I did want to know, however, what happened to the Frapper map on your website. I have just heard about it in some of your podcasts and thought it would be fun to see. There are still links to the Frapper map. If you look at the website, amateurtraveler.com, and go to the bottom right corner, there's a little display of the Frapper map. I stopped promoting it quite a while ago. As you noted, you must have been listening to old episodes, and the main reason for that is it seemed like the Frapper map technology, which allowed everybody to put a pin on the map that showed where they lived, really seemed to not scale very well. So once I started to have hundreds of people on the Frapper map, it became very unmanageable. And one of the reasons at the lower right-hand portion of the page is that loads last and therefore doesn't slow down the page. So you can still check that out, but I find their interface to be really kind of clunky. And so that's why I've stopped promoting the Frapper map, but thanks for the question. Charles also wrote a while back and said, my girlfriend and I recently decided to take a trip to Barbados, and I'm having a heck of a time finding the perfect place to stay. Listening to the podcast, it sounded like Jason did all right and found something for himself and Janie, and I'm wondering if they'd be willing to lend advice via email or phone. I've been doing a ton of research online, and every place that looks perfect is either too expensive or in a little less than ideal location. We're basically looking for the same experience they had, the wildlife preserve, beaches, maybe a cricket game, etc. I did forward on Charles' letter to Jason, and that is something that I have done in the past. I don't want to give out guests' email addresses if they might not be comfortable with that, but if you do have a question that you think our guests may be able to answer, let me know and I will forward on your information to them, and many of them I know have been getting back to the listeners with more specific questions. With that, we'll wrap up this show. Again, I'm hoping to talk to many of you on January 1st at the live call-in show, and you might want to show up a few minutes early and we'll show you how that works if you haven't been to TalkShoe.com before. Otherwise, drop me an email at host@amateurtraveler.com or call the comment line at 408-8494-POD. And as always, thanks so much for listening.
See one more cathedral, I got to sit in one more cafe. I know that I should be heading home, but maybe not today.
The best and the brightest served up daily by the sharpest minds in content delivery, pod show, and limelight.